The IRS didn't have a podium on the Fox Business stage at Tuesday's Republican presidential debate. Of course it didn't. But the agency still took a beating as the candidates vowed to put the IRS on the chopping block.
Get rid of all the special interest deductions. I'll be able to fire a whole bunch of IRS agents once we do that.
We don't reduce the IRS. We get rid of the IRS.
Every American pays 10% across the board. This plan eliminates the payroll tax, eliminates the death tax, eliminates the corporate income tax, and it abolishes the IRS.
I want a government really, really small. So small you can barely see it.
Playing to the populist message. We all love to hear, right? Oh, put the tax man away. But the call to abolish the IRS raised more than one eyebrow with Mark Everson. He's the former IRS Commissioner during the Bush administration. He's currently Vice Chair of Specialty Tax Service Alliance Provider Alliant Group. Mark is here in a Fox Business exclusive. Good to see you, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Yeah, and you were also running for president on the Republican side. You've ended that campaign, but you certainly haven't ended the emotion that goes with it. When the candidates said with glee, I'm going to shut down the IRS, your immediate thought was what?
It's just happy talk, Liz. There are a couple of key points here. First, it's very important that we address some of the shortfalls we've had in government at the IRS, at the VA. And the Secret Service. Everybody has every right to be disappointed the way the government has been running. But to demonize it is really not healthy. And look at what's happening with our police across the country. We need to have a certain respect for authority, and we need those revenues to come in. So just saying you're going to abolish something and demonizing the service, it doesn't help. We should have serious conversations about the policy, of course, but making these folks the boogeyman, it doesn't help.
Well, exactly. And I think that people don't seem to realize that the IRS, when you take out the sort of feisty negative profile that a lot of IRS agents might have to the actual public, they actually make sure that the information people send in is verified, correct? I mean, let's just talk basics here, Mark.
Well, that's exactly right. There are a host of responsibilities. It's not just income taxes. It's payroll taxes. It's the very complicated corporate taxes. It touches many different things, not to mention the Affordable Care Act, which I think was unfortunate that it got intermessed with that. But look, Liz, you need to reform the tax code. I'm all for that. But there are two problems with what's been going on. The first is the demonization of the government, if you will, which isn't healthy. And secondly is irresponsible tax proposals that come up trillions of dollars short. That doesn't make any sense. We're not being candid with the people. We need to be candid with the people.
Well, then you have Rand Paul and Mike Huckabee talking about a value-added tax, although they don't call it that. They call it a business collection tax or something. It's got some name. If people are looking at value-added taxes, that's what the Europeans do. We know that their fiscal situation isn't exactly very healthy over there. But putting that all aside, let's say Americans went for that. They went for the flat tax. Taxes cannot be collected without tax collectors. Is that what you would say?
I think that's pretty clear. Look, tax collectors are biblical. People have been complaining about tax collectors for millennia. So that's not going to change. You need to get the revenues in to run the government.
Okay, so what is the question you would have if you had a Chris Christie who said, I'll put it on a postcard? Or listen, again, simplifying the tax code is something that we need. There are thousands and thousands of pages of this, and it is outrageous that the American individual has to deal with that. But Carly Fiorina has said, I would only have a tax form that was 3 pages long. Is there anything problematic with that?
Let me make 2 points here, Liz. First, any proposal needs to be revenue neutral. I worked in the Reagan administration. The 8 years of the Reagan administration, the federal revenues averaged 17.5%. And that's exactly what they were as a percentage of GDP this last year. So the revenues are about where they've been historically. We can't afford to develop proposals that cut trillions out of the tax base unless we're going to end up like Greece and our debt is going to go even further into the drink. So that's one point. But I favor a tax framework that's been developed by Michael Gratz. He's a former Bush 41 official, and he's a professor at Columbia. He would put in a consumption tax that everybody would pay, so that's easier to force compliance. And then anybody earning 50 or under, or a couple are earning 100 or under, they wouldn't have to pay income taxes at all. So you'd return the income tax to what it was a century ago, just for the higher end, but at lower rates, and frankly, also the corporations at lower rates. This would be a sensible proposal. It would get at that issue. You'd give the American people something. They wouldn't have to deal with a bad old IRS, so they get something out of it. The economy would get going again. I think that's a sensible approach.
We need rooted in reality approaches, but we also need people to aim high, higher than we've been aiming. Mark, thank you very much. Mark Everson, former IRS Commissioner and former presidential candidate, saying that when you hear these candidates come on and say we're getting rid of the IRS, it's ridiculous. Those are his words, ridiculous.